I'm very, very pleased to welcome you all here to an extremely special event in the museum's calendar. The exhibition and the associated programs, it tells an extraordinary story about the child migration program. Over 100,000 children were sent to far-flung places in the empire, primarily in the 19th century. Some suffered very lonely and very brutal childhoods, and some had wonderful lives. No two stories are the same.
We left England in 1952, my sister and myself, on the Otranto. It was a huge ship and something that none of us had been on the seas before.
Well, I was in an orphanage in Middlemore Homes in Birmingham. 1940 we arrived in Australia. I was 6 years old.
I came out in 1953 and was sent out with the Sisters of Nazareth and lived in Geraldton in Nazareth House till I was 17 and a half.
I was one of those who was stolen out of my cradle when I was 2 months because I was born out of wedlock, and the church said to my mum she wasn't a fit and proper person to have a child. So the sisters took me, and I didn't meet my mother again until I was 57.
There are 25 people amongst you here today who were either child migrants or who are family of child migrants, and I am particularly pleased to welcome you to the museum.
Before we left, we were all accommodated in this lovely old home in Knockholt in Kent, and sort of told a bit about Australia and what it would be like and that sort of thing, and I've never been disappointed. So.
When we went to Tilbury Docks, there was bands, fanfare, and a lot of excitement. We thought as kids, oh good, this is going to be a big holiday.
Well, all we knew it was a nice holiday place, and they had horses for kids to ride, push bikes.
We got a Fremantle, and there again, we were met by a big band, music.
We got the rude shock when we went from Gates to Peerage.
It was a shock after the milk and honey stories the Christian Brothers told us in England.
Well, we had about 4 horses between about 200 and something kids, and about 2 push bikes.
In Australia, the children were sent to farm schools, of course, and institutions in Western Australia and in New South Wales. Some of them run by Fairbridge Society, others by Barnardo's, and the Christian Brothers too.
The Archbishop said to us, welcome to Australia. We've been looking for white stock because we want to populate the country.
That's the story of trying to make Australia white.
We were used as fodder for a policy, for the White Australia policy.
I was an orphan because my mother died at 22 years of age, and they put me in Barnardo's, which I'm very pleased treated me very well. After what I've read of other farms and schools and institutions.
We arrived in August 1952 and we drove up to Fairbridge Farm at Molong over the mountains.
It was good and bad at that school. I know there was cruelty, I know there were sexual mishaps and everything at that school, but there was a lot of good times, there was a lot of fun times, and there was a lot of good working people at that school.
Laurie and I ended up at the most notorious institution that has been now checked at Boys Town Bindoon.
Bindoon was a bleak. There wasn't a tree on the place when we got there.
They stripped us of our suits and our clothes and suitcases because we had little toys and things that we brought with us. We never ever saw them again, and started a 10 years of brutal life. We had to build our own dormitory. There was no dormitories. There was no kitchen. We had to build our own toilets.
I, at the tender age of 14, was driving a 5-ton truck, going out every day, leaving at 6 in the morning and picking up rocks, sand or gravel, whatever was required for the building.
Subsequent inquiries, both here and in the United Kingdom, have condemned the schemes in retrospect as being essentially flawed.
Why that place wasn't inspected before we got there, we'll never know.
It's hard to comprehend now how these things were ever allowed to happen. we must acknowledge with humility the pain endured by so many over so many decades.
I look back with some fond memories of Nazareth House, but it's what you find out when you leave, the lies that the nuns perpetrated. To find out that you've got this huge family after being told that your parents were dead.
There was a lot of problems. We didn't get a very good education at that time. I was made to leave school at 14 and a half to work on the farm, on the dairies and the piggeries and the poultries. The theme of the school was boys to be farmers and girls to farmers' wives.
They stuck us on farms, and the owners of the farms reckon they owned it.
They sent me to Queensland to work. I really loved the climate, the people, they were friendly, and I was with a terrific family. So I stayed with them 11 and a half years until they sold the farm.
The biggest problem I had when I left really was identity, not knowing who you are, where you come from, or anything about yourself, you know. I didn't even have a birth certificate.
I think the church also had this idea, because we were born out of wedlock, that we were children of the devil.
This letter here from my godmother, who informed me that my parents were still alive in 1975, and I had 5 brothers and sisters. A little bit late to bond with your family. If they had come and told us the truth, maybe when we left the convent, it would have helped.
Whatever we wrote in our letters was squashed. The staff had read them before we sent them. They didn't like them. They were gone. They were in the bin. Mum and Dad never got them. The principal there at the time, he had written over to our parents saying we enjoyed the place and we didn't want to come home.
And then, of course, the notorious Brother Keeney arrived early in 1948.
The stutter I got, that was caused by beaten by one of the Christian brothers.
It was a cruel place. Keeney was a sadist.
When I went back to the convent to ask for records, that was all they would give me. Only information I ever got from a convent where I spent 10 years of my life. It says my name, my mother's name, how old I was when I was put into the convent, and how old I was when I left, and where I was baptised. Not that it's precious to me. I keep it to show people that this is how heartless they were.
The story we went to, I would not wish it on any other child, and I would never ever want my childhood days back again.
The day I left Fairview, I told them, no one will ever step on me again. So they didn't. I told them where to go and left.
The Second World War devastated a lot of families in England, and my mother was pretty destitute, and she made a big sacrifice to send Linda and I here. And she's still alive. She's 92 in London, and we finally convinced her, I think, that it was the best thing she could have ever done for us.
We're scarred for life. We'll take it to the graves with us.
And yet, I've got no regrets whatsoever. I've shaped my life.
Even though we went through all this, we're survivors. It is a survival story from horrible beginnings. We were determined, well, we've got to do something with our lives. We're not just going to go by the wayside. And I think here we are today.
And I got married, settled down, had 3 kids, and I've got 7 grandkids, and I'm as happy as Larry.
I brought up 10 children. I've got 60 descendants. What better can you do to help populate the country?
I've got 3 children, 5 grandchildren. I've had a pretty good life.
And then when I turned 70, I wrote my book to tell my kids who I was, literally. We were not called forgotten Australians for nothing. We were actually forgotten. But now we're remembered, and I think things like such as this exhibition here will go a long way to tell the story, and also go a long way to have us remembered for all time.
done a wonderful job. I never expected something like this.
And I always hung on to everything, all my photos, all my possessions. I used to treasure them, you know. And today I'm glad I did.
What I hope is as many school children and children come to see it, to learn from the past, that this all happened in our own lifetimes. This wasn't Dickens' days. For the children of today who could not comprehend what we went through, at least they go back to their schools, go back to their homes and say, wow, what an experience we've just had.